Farmville was an agricultural simulation game developed by Zynga and launched on Facebook on June 19, 2009. Quickly, Farmville became the most popular game on Facebook, but there's more to the story of Farmville than it becoming an internet phenomenon. This simple flash game about farming not only changed how people used Facebook, but it changed the landscape of gaming and even the wider world of social media, and not necessarily for the better. Let's attempt to explore the legacy and impact of Farmville. Farmville was far from the first of its kind, but it was, unarguably, the most successful and memorable. The game heavily borrowed from several forerunners, including Green Patch and Farmtown, with Farmville said to be a near-exact copy of the latter. Part of the reason for Farmville's success and ability to vastly overshadow any competition was its developer, Zynga. Zynga already had an established presence on Facebook with an already massive user base, thanks in large part to Mafia Wars. By using their already popular games, Zynga was able to advertise their newest offering to a large audience, giving Farmville a turbo-boosted head start. Thanks to this, Farmville hit the ground running, and within just 6 months of its launch, the game had amassed 72.9 million active users, which was, at that time, more active users than the whole of Twitter. The game was a juggernaut that remained the most popular game on Facebook for the next 2 years. Farmville peaked in 2009 with over 32 million daily users and more than 83 million monthly active users. Farmville's simplicity and accessibility were certainly major factors in its success, but its simplicity was not always viewed as a good thing by all, as in 2010 Time magazine listed Farmville as one of the 50 worst inventions, saying it was barely a game. As for game mechanics, Farmville revolved around building and maintaining a farm. You did this by plowing land, planting and harvesting crops which grew on a timer system. Growing and harvesting crops gave you experience, which allowed you to level up, with new crops, trees, livestock, and other amenities, as well as the option to expand your farm becoming available as you leveled up. Players were able to freely design their farm as they wanted as well. Where to place not only crop fields but also trees, animals, and various other amenities such as houses and farm equipment was left up to the player. This led to many players creating extravagant, fairy tale-esque farms, and even using the tools and objects at their disposal to create virtual art. Farmville allowed people to showcase their ability to turn a barren, desolate land into a beautiful work of art, long before New Horizons. I was not immune to Farmville. I sunk hours upon hours into the game back in the day. I went to forums dedicated to the game where you could find people to friend for the sole purpose of having them aid you in maintaining your precious, precious virtual farm. I even at one point spent real-world money on this game. One of the funnier aspects I remember about recruiting Farmville friends is that they would actively refuse to help you unless you trapped your farmer in a cage of hay bales. This is because the avatar would actually move around the screen to perform each individual task, normally at an infuriatingly slow pace, and this simple animation could cause your browser to freeze up or even crash. Farmville was simple, easy, and addictive fun. It created a template which nearly all subsequent Facebook and even now mobile games would follow. A constant barrage of notifications ensuring you could never forget or even escape the game. The game itself being made better and easier with the help of friends, causing you to reach out to everybody, including distant relatives, acquaintances from high school, and even total strangers, in hopes of getting them hooked on the game so you'd have one extra pair of virtual hands to milk your virtual cow. It was a game almost perfectly designed to keep people hooked on it and incentivized its own user base to recruit new players for it, virtually negating the need for Zynga to advertise its own creation. But the behaviors Farmville normalized, drawing not just friends but even strangers in as resources for both yourself and the game, had lasting and negative impacts, according to Ian Bogost. Bogost, a game designer and professor at Georgia Tech, called Farmville the pace car of the internet economy of the 2010s. It gamified attention, encouraging interaction loops in a way that has been imitated not only by a multitude of other games, but also by social media sites such as Instagram, and even by conspiracy theorist groups. Bogost went on to say, the internet itself is a bazaar of obsessive worlds, where the goal is to bring you back to it in order to do the thing it offers, in order to get your attention and serve ads against it or otherwise derive value from the activity. Farmville was a free-to-play game, so naturally it had microtransactions. Something else it has been credited with setting the template of, despite, again, not being the first. While it was possible to play and enjoy the game without spending any money, over time, Zynga began to face increased criticism for its alleged shady behavior to generate more revenue from the game. Not only were some of the best decorations locked behind a paywall, but so were other useful items, such as a ring that prevented your crops from withering, which you could buy for $45. Looking back, it is easy to see the microtransaction scheme used in Farmville replicated in virtually every modern mobile and even some console games. All of this is to say that Farmville set up the standard by which nearly every aspect of modern social media and mobile gaming operates, and not in a good way. Another point of Farmville's legacy is how it blew the gates of casual gaming wide open. The game managed to tap into a then unserved market of individuals who would never spend $300 on a gaming system, but would certainly sit down at their computer and play a free game for hours on end and maybe spend a couple bucks here and there to make their experience a little easier. The game's simplicity and relaxing nature allowed it to appeal to a massive audience, many of whom would have never likely played a game in any other situation. Farmville effectively introduced millions to casual gaming and built up a player base primed for the mobile game explosion, which would include a multitude of similarly built free-to-play games laden with in-app purchases directly targeted at the ready and willing base. Developers who had previously scorned and belittled Farmville were soon attempting to emulate nearly every aspect of it in hopes of getting even a fraction of that player base to try out their offering and maybe spend a little money on it. For many, the most memorable part of Farmville were the notifications and posts that consistently clogged up the feeds of Facebook users even if they themselves didn't play the game. After many complaints from users about what was essentially spam, Facebook began to limit the amount of notifications games could send and posts they could make. But despite the complaints, there is no doubt the notifications and posts worked. Over its lifespan, Farmville had numerous promotional tie-ins with various companies including McDonald's, Bang, 7-Eleven, American Express, Discover Card, Capital One. Clearly not playing favorites with the credit card companies, Zynga wanted to be sure you knew it would gladly accept them all. Dish Network, and even Frito-Lay. Beyond the companies, the game also featured cross-promotions with movies including Rio and Megamind. But potentially the most memorable Farmville promotion was done with Lady Gaga, with users able to visit a special Gaga-themed farm and complete tasks in order to gain not only limited edition in-game items, but also access to special previews of her then upcoming Born This Way album. By the time this promotion happened, I personally had already abandoned my farm and Facebook as a whole, so I didn't get to experience the absolute majesty of this for myself, which I regret. Truly, I may sound sarcastic, but I would have genuinely loved to experience this. I mean, look at it. In 2010, Zynga partnered with Hasbro to release a series of Farmville-branded versions of classic Hasbro games, such as Memory, Go Fish, and Old Maid, as well as a rebrand of Hungry Hungry Hippos called Hungry Hungry Herd, featuring the characters Gobbling Horse, Munching Pig, Snacking Sheep, and Chomping Cow in place of the hippos. Farmville was one of several Zynga games to also be released as a physical board game. In December 2020, Farmville, along with a countless amount of other browser-based games, shut down due to the discontinuation of Flash. Though the Farmville franchise is far from dead, Farmville 2, originally released in September 2012, still exists as an online browser game, while Farmville 3, a mobile exclusive, was released in November 2021. The impact of Farmville was a large one, as it inadvertently created the mold from which not only nearly every mobile game, but even modern social media was born. A simple Flash game about farming managed to forever change the landscape of gaming and the internet, a horrifyingly impressive feat. And while it can be effectively argued the legacy of Farmville is, ultimately, not a good one, there are those that would stand in opposition to that and have ground to do so. For millions of people, Farmville provided a needed form of entertainment. It filled what would have otherwise been empty hours and introduced many to a new hobby in gaming, even if it was just casually maintaining a virtual farm. The legacy of Farmville is not all bad. There is quite a lot of good and fun in it. So remember Farmville for the better or worse. Remember the incessant notifications. Remember the in-game purchases you now regret. Remember the irritation of forgetting to harvest your strawberries on time. But also, remember the fun of it. Or maybe just remember it when you need something to blame for the advent of microtransactions.